The temple is the palace of God. Priests, Kohanim, are God's palace servants. They are attendant at court. God's house, his temple, has a throne. It has a table with candles on it. When you go to his house, you bring bread and you bring wine. You have a feast with God at his house. It has a kitchen, that is the outside altar, so on and so forth. Now, if the temple is God's palace and the priests are his attendants at court, his palace servants, it stands to reason that God rules the world through his temple. And if he rules the world through his temple, and liturgy is what happens at his temple, liturgy is what rules the world. God doesn't keep the world running except through the Eucharist. It is in the incarnation of the Word that God irrevocably binds himself to the stuff of creation. God exists of himself and cannot not exist. By taking creation into himself and all the specific things which make up creation, not just the idea of creation, but this specific world, he becomes a denizen of a particular locale, from a particular family. That family's identity is constituted by its relations, genealogical and otherwise, with all other families. So God irrevocably commits himself to the world as it actually exists by joining his own infinite existence to the world's finite existence, bridging the gap and guaranteeing forever the continued reality of creation. This is a process which has been developing from the beginning of creation. Because God, from the beginning of creation, has been moving history forward by promises. He gives a word. He swears by himself, I will do this. And because God cannot lie, that word itself is the means by which creation is upheld. And then when that word becomes incarnate, this is the culmination of a process of divine indwelling, which began with promises he made to Adam. The election of Israel is a step forward in the process of divine indwelling, where God earths himself in the soil of a natural human family before becoming ultimately a son of Israel himself. So as the incarnation is the means by which God holds up the world, and the Eucharist is the presentation and realization of that incarnation in the dynamics of our daily and weekly lives, it is the Eucharist through which God is upholding the world. How is it that the particulars of history are drawn up into the incarnate word? Well, we present them constantly to God in a Eucharistic context. We say, for peace of the world, peace of the holy churches of God. We say, safety for travelers. We commemorate names before the Eucharist. We are bringing all of creation with all of its mundane details into the reality of the incarnation and continuing to draw the particulars of history into God. And this happens in a liturgical context because the heavenly temple is the heavenly palace. It is the place from which God rules the world. And because liturgy is what happens in the heavenly temple, liturgy is the means by which God rules the world.